Hey everybody. So, let me full screen this. We just talked about this question of is this counter to democracy? But I will ask you this. How else are you actually going to run a government? I want to come back to this. We have a Department of State, and there is a total of 41,577 people in this department. Do you propose that we vote for every single one of these individuals? Do you suppose that we vote for all 323,208 members of the Veterans Affairs? There are already 433 congresspeople. There are 100 senators, and there is one president. And it already seems that this is too much to ask most Americans to vote for. Do you want to take time out of your day to vote for all of these people, especially if they are not qualified? You may be remembering our first discussions about direct versus delegated democracy. This is the price of delegated democracy. Ideally, you have trained professionals staffing these bureaucracies. You have trained teachers working in the Department of Education. You have trained lawyers working in the Department of Justice. You have civilian experts of the military working in the Department of Defense. And you, prospective voter, don't have to take time out of your day to vote for all of these people. That is why bureaucracy is essential, and that is why it is not as bad as you think. It can be frustrating. It is a lot of paperwork, but there is a purpose. There is a method to the madness. Now, historically, this has been what we call a spoil system. Many of you may have heard the phrase, to the victor go the spoils. This is typically true of presidents who, when they won elections, would allocate cabinet positions and leadership positions in key government bureaucracies to trusted friends. Jobs were political prizes. This was problematic. So we professionalized this with the Pendleton Civil Service Act, which says that members of bureaucracies must be hired and promoted based off of their merit. This establishes an actual civil service in the United States. So now, instead of just being filled with the president's friends, each of these agencies had to have a criteria for professionalism, a criteria for hiring, and a standard for expertise. That is, there were laws now that the Ministry of Agriculture had to hire experts of agriculture. The Ministry of the Interior had to hire experts of land management. This professionalizes all of these bureaucracies and creates a very robust and much more functioning government. Now, the heads of these particular cabinet positions, to this day, every now and then they go to the president's friends. And that is not great. That is not a good practice. Presidents should not do that. Ideally, you have a Senate that can stop a president from abusing their power to appoint their friends to these agencies. So now we've got this great story of the Mad Postman. So this is a story that I always like to share when we talk about bureaucracies. There was an expectation, again, that presidents would just award their friends certain positions. And you had this postal worker. His name was Charles J. Guiteau, who was probably an undiagnosed schizophrenic. He believed that James Garfield, then the president, could appoint him to be the minister or the ambassador to Paris, which is not a real position. You cannot be the ambassador to a particular city. But Guiteau felt personally slighted and assassinated James Garfield. Absolutely wild stuff. And this is where the phrase going postal comes from. Going postal gets its origins in Guteau, this mad postman assassinating Garfield. So the expansion of government leads to the expansion of bureaucracy. As government begins to do more things, it needs more bureaucracies. So war leads to the expansion of the Department of Defense. Government governing morality, such as the case of prohibition, leads to the creation of the ATF, at the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Economics and an expanding economy leads to the creation of the Federal Reserve, as well as New Deal agencies such as the Office of Social Security. Geography, the post office, but also the ministry, or I'm sorry, the Department of the Interior. And of course, new ministries, or I'm sorry, departments were needed to oversee slavery and indeed modern day immigration. So then we have a political theorist, a comparativist, a founding political scientist named Max Weber. Now you see that W and you want to call him Weber. Don't do it. Don't do it. He's German. Their W's are V's. Why are that way? Why are they that way? I don't know. But Weber describes the ideal bureaucracy as being characterized by hierarchy and division of labor. Hierarchy refers to rank. Bureaucracies are a system of ranks, and these ranks are called a chain of command. So you have the big boss on top, you have the little bosses and the intermediary bosses, and you have the workers all the way on the bottom. What makes this work is this desire for advancement. Ideally, members of this bureaucracy are performing their allotted jobs as best as they can so that they can be promoted. Now, this division of labor is another important mark of a bureaucracy. There are experts in their own sectors or agencies. That is, if you are running the Department of Agriculture, you don't necessarily want or need an individual who's an expert in war fighting. That is inappropriate. So ideally, bureaucracies are composed of experts in their own sectors, and they have a fixed routine. You shouldn't ask a bureaucrat to do something that they're not used to doing. Why? Because they're not trained for it. So you need a specialized body of experts doing the same function over and over again with the promise that they can advance in the ranks so they acquire more expertise, they perform their job well, and everything stays afloat. Bureaucracies have what we call standard operating procedures. This is written rules. This is what all the forms are for, and what all the forms are for is so no one can just make stuff up. All the forms also allow equal rules. It doesn't matter who you are, you have to fill out the same form as everyone else, and rules apply equally. This is not just true of forms, but ideally of merit based promotion. That is, it should not matter who you are when you enter this bureaucracy. What should matter more is how well you perform your job. And that leads me to the last point. You want qualified people doing these jobs, not just people with connections. You don't want the president's brother, for instance, heading up the FBI. What do they know about law enforcement? What do they know about law at all? You need experts conducting this work. Now, the real word, outside the real world. This is often a tension because bureaucrats and bureaucracy often doesn't seem to mesh with the real world. There are some downsides to bureaucracies. So there's this problem of bureaucracies becoming rote. That is, following routines without adjusting them for modern society. So we talked about forms. Why are we still using paper forms? What is up with this? Everything is electronic now. It could move faster. Why has this not adjusted? Well, it's because bureaucracies have fixed routines. They don't want to change things. And then there's this problem of imperialism, of the United States expanding especially in terms of law enforcement. When bureaucracies compete, they want more things, they want a bigger chunk of the budget, they're going to lobby each other, they're going to overwhelm people, overwhelm the president, overwhelm Congress, and they're going to try and get what they want. This relates this relates to turf wars, and we've talked about this before. Who does what and overlap? It's very unclear. And the FBI focusing on domestic law enforcement and the CIA focusing on external intelligence gathering meant that the two agencies do not cooperate with each other. This led to an intelligence gap which allowed the 9/11 attacks. The creation of the new agency, the DHS, was supposed to solve this problem, but now within the DHS, we have Border Patrol, we have ICE, we have this alphabet soup of security agencies, and no one can quite tell who's supposed to do what. And clientelism. Standard operating procedures allow for some people or organizations to develop familiarity. If you know how to work the system, you can game the system. Clientelism is the practice of awarding individuals for their political patronage. So that is the practice of an elected official granting someone favor because they voted for them. Clientelism can be a big problem, particularly in staffing the leadership of these bureaucracies, and when a certain really adept individual who knows how to work this system enters a bureaucracy, they too can take part in this clientelism. Imagine a boss moving up the ranks with someone right under them in a very you scratch my back, you scratch yours. They're doing shading things, but they still manage to get to the top nonetheless. We will continue here on the next set of videos.